Alright, so today we're playing an absolute classic from the RTS genre, that being Company of Heroes. That's right, the original one that came back out in 2006, which honestly feels mad to say, considering that this is a 20-year-old game now, and especially because in a lot of ways this game still holds up ridiculously well today. Now, I've gone back and played through the entire campaign again, spent some time in Skirmish, and honestly, this might still be one of the best RTS games ever made. It's got an absolute ton of content, a real solid campaign, and gameplay that even now feels unique compared to a lot of modern strategy games. So in this video, I'm going to break down the story, the gameplay, visuals, all of the expansions, and whether this game is still worth playing today, especially with that you can pick it up for a couple of quid these days. So let's start with the story and the campaign. So the campaign in Company Heroes focuses mainly on American forces during World War II, and straight away it throws you into one of the most iconic missions in the war, that being the D-Day landing on Omaha Beach. And even now, this mission is genuinely impressive. You've got chaos everywhere, explosions going off, soldiers dropping around you. It really captures that sense of the scale and intensity of the war. From there, the game takes you through a series of missions based on real life events as you push through Europe. You're capturing towns, holding positions, defending against counterattacks. It really feels like you're part of a bigger war. Now, I will say, structurally, the missions are fairly similar. Most of them boil down to these simple points, either attacking a location, defending a location, or just holding out against waves of enemies. But what keeps it interesting is the variety in maps and scenarios that you've got. You've got missions where you're either storming tight, small-knit towns, defending against overwhelming forces, or even controlling airborne squads without having a base. And even ones where it's quite a larger scale, where tanks become more useful, and that's what you kind of aim for instead of just the infantry units. It's got a lot of variety to it. But those missions where you don't have a base are actually some of my favourites. Calling in paratroopers and managing unlimited resources feels a lot more unique. Each mission can take around about an hour to complete if you're playing it properly, so there's a good amount of depth here. And overall, the story itself is solid. Nothing groundbreaking, but it does really good job at capturing what it feels like for World War II. The expansion packs that came out alongside this as well also brought along a load of other campaign missions to play, such as a British campaign and a German one where you're controlling pretty much a Tiger tank for the most part. And these may not be as long as the original campaigns, but they are really nice additions and add just a lot more variety in gameplay that you can play. Now, speaking of the gameplay, this is where Company Heroes really stands out from any other RTS. At its core, it is just a real-time strategy game, but it just does things way differently. You're not just building units and throwing them at enemies, everything's just got such much more of a tactical approach to it. It's like cover actually matters, positioning matters, and flanking is absolutely huge in it. You can't just run into a machine gun nest, for example. You'll just get wiped out instantly or even pinned down so that your unit can't move any further. Instead, you're constantly thinking, how do I approach this? Where do I position my troops? And can I flank from the other side to get a good shot? There's also a nice destruction element to this. Buildings can be destroyed and cover can disappear. The battlefield is just constantly changing. Unit wise, there's also a pretty good balance. You've got a ton of infantry squads to choose from, some decent amount of tanks and support weapons that you can all choose. There's just enough variety here to keep things interesting, but not so much that it becomes overwhelming. Compared to newer RTS games where it might feel slightly limited, but honestly, I think it works in its favour. It's very much easier to pick things up and understand. It just keeps things clean, and anyone who's basically picking this game up from the start can learn it pretty quickly. And then you've got the skirmish mode, which this is where you can sink absolute hours into a game, and that's just one game. Back when I was younger, I used to play this non-stop, and even now you can easily lose 2 to 3 hours just in a single match. They go on forever depending on what game mode you're playing. They're so good, and what makes Company Heroes for me just absolutely outstanding. And speaking of outstanding, when this first came out in 2006, the graphics back then, I remember like playing this and it was absolutely insane at how good it looked. And even now, going back and playing it today, look, they actually look pretty damn decent. character models still hold up. They've got unique badges on their arms to show you what kind of unit they belong to. The vehicles all look pretty good as well, and explosions are still satisfying and look pretty much realistic. It's not going to blow you away by modern standards, but it's definitely not bad at all and easily playable in today's standards. The lighting does a good job of creating atmosphere and the environment feels believable. Also, performance-wise, it's absolutely solid, which you would expect with an older game. The game is locked to 60 FPS, which is fine, and honestly, you don't need it any higher, to be honest. You can tinker about in settings and patches to get it higher, but honestly, 60 FPS is perfectly fine for this unless you're trying to go down that real kind of competitive route. The only time it can feel slightly janky with the FPS is probably the cutscenes, and I don't think increasing the FPS would help this. It's just the way I think they've been rendered, to be honest. But again, it's not an issue at all because it's the gameplay that matters, and the gameplay is so buttery smooth, it's all fine. The cutscenes just have to bear with, and like I say, if you're not going to play the campaign and you're just going to play skirmish mode, which in my opinion is the best mode, then you're going to be absolutely fine with this and not going to notice it at all. But one of the key things I have to mention with this game, with the fact it being from 2006, is that it just works. I was so happy to be able to boot this up, no messing around with fixers, no crashes, it just boots up and runs, which is very, very rare for older games. I've played a ton recently and made videos on quite a few where I've had issues and I've had to download some form of mod or patch or something to get it working. This, you just literally install it, click play and you go in, which is just such a good feeling. So in terms of the amount of content that this game gives you, well, the campaign missions, like I say, take around about an hour each if you're willing to do most of the side missions and take your time doing them. Full campaign with its expansions, you're probably looking at about 35 to 45 hours to complete, and that's just kind of the basics of completing. If you wanted to go for full completion, and I'm talking all medals, all side missions completed, you're easily looking at around 80 plus hours, and that's before you've even touched skirmish or multiplayer, which, like I say, skirmish alone can add hundreds of hours of gameplay if you get into it. I think on this Company Heroes I logged about 200 or 300 hours just playing skirmish alone. It's just such a good game mode, and it's even great when you've got a LAN party going or something like that. It just adds so much depth to it, and yeah, it's such a good game to play. On top of that, the community side of this game is absolutely brilliant. They've got a fantastic Steam workshop where you can find tons of different community maps, different game modes. It just has a ton of replayability. I know there's even mods to increase the amount of units you can have on screen. Granted, it can get a bit janky when you're pushing units that, you know, past that population cap, but it's just great that you can mess about and do this stuff. And like I say, there's that many mods on here that you can just play about 5 to 10 different games just because of how they managed to mod it. It's so good. Now, I touched a bit on it earlier, but the expansion packs added so much variety to this as well, because with the base game you had only 2 factions that you could play from. You had the Allied forces, which was mainly the Americans, where they are more mobile, versatile, and just kind of strong all around. And then you had the Axis that you could play as well, so they've got the defensive, heavy armour, more structure. And yeah, like I say, you got these expansions that came in, such as opposing fronts. They added the British Commonwealth, which was brilliant, and the Panzer Elite Division as well for the Axis side, and also added, like I say, a couple of new campaigns in there as well. And then on top of that, we also got another expansion pack called Tales of Valor, which included new units all around, new multiplayer modes like Direct Fire and Stonewall. And honestly, these expansions just added so much to it. This is when games really added stuff. It was fantastic to play, and like I say, you can go back now and get a complete edition for just a couple of £, and it's just an absolute go-to for anyone who loves RTS, and especially anyone who loves a World War II genre-themed game as well. It's just such a brilliant game. Now, when I went back to play this, I didn't actually touch any of the multiplayer. However, I have looked, researched it, and even now the multiplayer is still active, and almost as active as when it first came out. It's just tons and tons of people are getting together and still playing this game, which is absolutely crazy considering, like I mentioned, we're coming up to 20 years old now with this game. It's just still such a dedicated player base, and yeah, if you're willing to wait and go into Discord servers, you'll easily find a game, and it's still got a bit of a competitive side to it as too, which is, yeah, absolutely incredible. So let's just look at the pros and cons overall for this. So the game still looks unbelievably good, like really, really decent. It can definitely pass for being played today. The gameplay is fantastic, it's tactical and satisfying. There's just a load of content here for you to play, depending on how you want to play the game. It's got a fantastic World War II atmosphere and a strong replayability. As for the downsides, well, to be honest, I think there's only a few. That being that the missions can feel fairly similar when you're doing the campaign. There's a slight issue with the cutscenes where they feel dated, but that's only a minor thing. And then the only thing that I really personally think is a bit of a negative is that the German faction can feel a bit overpowered. In my opinion, they seem to have the most powerful units, but look, it's not like they're massively overpowered. There's a slight edge towards them. And like I said earlier, it's just one of those games that just is absolutely amazing to play in bursts, where you can just pick it up here and there and play a game for an hour or two and then drop it. You're not going to sit there and probably play it for a whole week like I did. You can get a little bit burnt out, but if you just have this installed on your computer and you fancy a couple of games here and there, like I say, it's so easy just to pick up and play, then it's an absolute go-to. So looking at the reviews on Steam today, well, it scores at very positive, and as you can tell from my review, I completely agree with that. I think it is such a good game. On Metacritic as well, it also scored 93. Like I say, completely agree with that. I think it is such a good, unique game, and back then it was incredible, and even now it is still incredible. And for what this game offers, like I say, especially around that £6 for the full package, it's absolute insane value for money. So look, if you've never played this game before, I definitely recommend giving it a go. And if you have played it, well, I'm sure you'd know how good this game is. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you had, give it a like, subscribe for tons more videos like this coming out, and I'll catch you in the next one.